Okay, so today's video we're going to be talking about toxicology. So toxicology is the study of poisons and drugs and how they affect the body. So poison is going to be any naturally occurring or manufactured substance that can cause severe harm or death. So toxins are naturally produced substances. They're going to be produced by plants, animals, and bacteria that's capable of causing disease or death. Drugs are any chemical or substance that affects the process of the mind and body. Substance used in the diagnosis, treatment, or prevention of a disease, or any substance that's used recreationally. So narcotics, hallucinogens, opiates, we'll talk about these in depth later. There's several different ways to administer a toxin or drug into the body. Common ways are ingestion, so substance is eaten and then that's absorbed into your digestive system. Another way is to inhale the substance. So through inhalation, the substance is then absorbed into the bloodstream through the lungs. Or we can inject it. So there's several different ways to inject. We've got transdermal, where it's just through the skin into muscle tissue, so kind of like when you get a flu vaccine, or directly into a blood vessel, which is intravenous. So, when you actually have a person putting the needle straight into your vein, like when you get an IV. We can also have absorption through the skin. So some drugs nowadays, actually prescription drugs, are given to you through a patch, the transdermal patch, where it's absorbed into the bloodstream through your skin. Next thing we want to talk about is toxicity. So toxicity is how toxic a certain substance is. So almost every substance is toxic to some extent. Even water, if you drink enough water, you will have negative consequences for drinking too much water. In fact, you can die from drinking massive amounts of water. Don't try it. I know we're all bored right now. So the dose given here is in milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So basically, if the average person has a body weight somewhere in between 50 to 100 kilograms, so 100 kilograms would be 220 pounds, that's how many milligrams you would have to take into your body in order to have it be fatal. So level 1, more than 1500 milligrams would be, that's a massive amount for every kilogram body weight. So for the average adult, you'd be drinking more than a quart of that substance. So substances like that basically aren't toxic at all. And then it goes up to, things that are super toxic, so less than 7 drops of something that would be able to kill an average adult. So we've got the dose, how much was taken, duration. So if you're given a little bit over many, days, weeks, months, years, that can build up in your body and eventually become harmful over that time. Or on the other hand, you can have toxins that you're taking infrequently or you're exposed to infrequently, and for short bursts of time that your body is able to basically filter out. We've got method of exposure, ingestion versus inhalation versus injected versus absorbed. So the time it takes for that to get into your body is going to be different: ingested, inhaled, injected, absorbed. And then interactions with any other substances in the body. So alcohol, prescription drugs, these can have interactions with other toxins and drugs. So, how do we test for the presence of poisons and drugs? Well, that's not lemonade in that cup. So, oftentimes we use bodily fluids, urine, blood. If we're looking at a more serious case, it can be stomach contents. So if that's an autopsy, could be looking at stomach contents, or if somebody shows up in the emergency room and they're unsure of what they put into their system, that would be one way of figuring it out. We can take a look at the internal organs. So that would be, once again, something that's going to happen during an autopsy. Vitreous humor fluid of the eye. So the vitreous humor is a harder fluid. Well, it's not a harder fluid. It's basically, it's the sac of fluid in your eye that gives your eye its shape. And then we've got breathalyzers. Obviously, we're not going to be doing those for autopsies. And then the hair actually keeps a record of, any sort of poison or drug use. And we can also take a look at skin samples for some poisons and drugs. So when someone is poisoned, it's classified as either intentional, so drugs taken to treat an illness or pain, accidental, so unintentional overdose or harmful combination that they weren't aware of. So, painkillers and alcohol would be an accidental poisoning. A friend of mine, 20 years ago, popped a couple Tylenols and then went out binge drinking, and lucky he's still around. Or it could be deliberate. It could be somebody intending to kill somebody or harm someone, or it could be a suicide. one of the things we're going to do for today is we're going to read about Alexander Litvinenko. So I'm not going to tell you who Alexander Litvinenko is because you're going to read about it. Sorry, you almost got me. Accidental drug overdoses are another way that toxicology comes in. It's more common than actual deliberate poisoning. And we all know the list of celebrities who've passed this way, plenty of them. Whitney Houston, John Belushi, Heath Ledger, Chris Farley, River Phoenix, Steve Clark, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix. Michael Jackson had suspicious chemicals in his body when he passed. You know, the list goes on and on. Drugs and crime are, as long as drugs are illegal, there will be crime revolving around it. So, illegal drugs are those that have no current medical use. These are deemed Schedule 1 drugs, and that is a classification given to them by the DEA. Examples of illegal drugs are heroin, LSD. Controlled substances are legal drugs whose sale, possession, and use are restricted because of the effect of the drug and the potential for abuse. So these would be things that you would need some sort of prescription for. So it's not illegal for everybody to have these, but there's certain situations where it is legal to. So narcotics, depressants, stimulants usually fall into the controlled substances. So now once again, this is put out by the DEA. Schedule 1 illegal drugs have a high potential for abuse and are not used in medicine. So, you know, some of you right now might be going like, well, why is marijuana on there? Well, people have been trying to get marijuana reclassified as a Schedule 2 drug for years and years and years, but here we are, it's 2020, and it still hasn't happened, even though medical marijuana is legal in the majority of states, including North Carolina. Schedule 2 drugs have a high potential for abuse, but they are used in medicine with a lot of restrictions. So opium, morphine, codeine, oxycodone, cocaine, amphetamine, methamphetamine. So these have medical uses, but they also have, you know, recreational uses. Schedule 3 has a moderate potential for abuse. They are used in medicine. So anabolic steroids, ketamine, phenobarbital, Tylenol, and codeine. So those are things that you can get a prescription for, but then again, there's people out there who abuse steroids, abuse ketamine. Schedule 4 has a low potential for abuse, and they are used in medicine. So something like Valium, right? And then we've got Schedule 5, which is low, used in medicine, so low-grade stimulants, narcotics, cough suppressants. So arrests for drug abuse have been rising since the early 1990s. Drug offenders account for more than half of federal prison inmates and 20% of state prison inmates. So we've got 5 different classes of controlled substances that we're going to go through: stimulants, hallucinogens, narcotics, anabolic steroids, and depressants. So hallucinogens are often plant-based. They affect perception, thinking, self-awareness, and your emotions. Examples are mescaline from a peyote cactus, mushroom extracts, LSD. So LSD was originally discovered on a fungus that grows on rye and other grains. It's odorless, colorless, and tasteless, and is a very potent mood changer. MDMA, which is more commonly called ecstasy, PCP, or angel dust, which was first developed as an anesthetic, but then started to produce hallucinations, and it can cause people to lose touch with reality for weeks. And that can be used as a powder, a tablet, or a capsule. Narcotics are a class of drug that reduces pain by suppressing the central nervous system's ability to relay pain messages. They alter the mood and behavior of the person, cause drowsiness and sleep, and they're very addictive. As far as street drugs, opium was the original. So if you take a look at the poppy plant here, over to the side, you can see how it's been kind of scored. Not really cut, just kind of, little tiny scrape down the side. And then there's that white stuff oozing out. That's collected and then processed into opium. And, opium, that's what the British people used. Well, not the British people. The British Empire used to flood China with opium way back in the day because imperialism was a great time. Heroin is derived from opium and commonly is injected. Prescription drugs that are derived from opium, we've got morphine, which is used, basically if somebody's had a surgery, morphine's a very powerful pain drug. Hydrocodone, which is Vicodin. Oxycodone, which is your Percocet and your OxyContin. And then codeine are all derived from opiates. For stimulants increase energy, alertness, productivity, endurance, suppress the appetite, and then when that drug wears off, usually there's a depression. They are highly addictive. Examples are amphetamines like speed, methamphetamines, crack and cocaine. Anabolic steroids promote cell and tissue growth and division. They're produced in the lab. They have a structure similar to testosterone. Originally these were used to treat hypogonadism, so the low production of testosterone. Now it's used to treat delayed puberty, impotence, muscle wasting caused by HIV. So anabolic steroids have medical uses, but they also have some people like weightlifters and wrestlers and stuff like that to increase muscle and bone mass. Or maybe it's 1999 and we're talking about Major League Baseball. Negative side effects are acne, increased body hair, baldness, high blood pressure and cholesterol, impaired fertility in men, blood clotting, kidney and liver cancers, heart attacks. Depressants relieve anxiety. They reduce bodily functions like the heart rate by acting on the central nervous system and increasing the neurotransmitter GABA. This produces drowsiness, slows brain activity. Side effects can be slurred speech, loss of coordination, kind of like alcohol intoxication, because alcohol is a depressant. Overdose can lead to death, slow breathing, heart rate, coma. And then mixing depressants with alcohol oftentimes increases their effect. Barbiturates and benzodiazepines are depressants. There's bacterial toxins, like botulism. So botulism is produced by the Clostridium botulinum bacteria. It's found in contaminated food. So oftentimes, if you have a can of food that is seemingly bulging at the seams, go ahead and take a pass on that one. It's the most poisonous biological toxin known to man. It paralyzes muscles by blocking the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. And Botox is just purified botulism toxin. Hey! Alright. So basically, with Botox, they're using the purified toxin to, paralyze certain muscles. How fun is that? So Botox can be used to treat muscle spasms, eye conditions, excessive sweating, and cosmetically. We've got tetanus, which is produced by Clostridium tetani, causes deadly nervous system disease that has your muscles spasm. It starts in your jaw, that's called lockjaw, and it interferes with your breathing. We've also got pesticides and heavy metals. So pesticides like DDT, aldrin, dieldrin. So those are carcinogenic. DDT basically causes the shells of bird eggs to become very, very thin. So DDT was unregulated, back in the 60s and 70s. And there was a, huge reduction in the number of certain birds because of that. Metals like lead, arsenic, and mercury. So mercury, so the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland shows signs of mercury poisoning. And then other lethal agents interfere with the production of ATP, destroying a cell's inability to transmit electrical impulses, like hydrogen cyanide, which is used in gas chambers. Carbon monoxide basically bonds strongly to the hemoglobin in your blood, which prevents it from carrying oxygen to the rest of your body. Potassium chloride, sodium pentothal, those are used in lethal injections. We've got bioterrorism agents, like ricin. So it's a waste product of the manufacture of castor oil from castor beans. Breaking Bad, spoiler alert there. Prevents cells from making proteins. Got anthrax. So anthrax is a spore that can be inhaled. It's produced by Bacillus anthracis. In 2001, there were 22 cases of anthrax infection from envelopes sent through the U.S. Postal Service. 11 people died because of it. So there was this bioterrorist who was basically sending people anthrax, like a white powder through the mail.